If you're a physician with a podcast, there's a decent chance you've had this thought. I'm putting out good content. Why does it feel like nothing's happening? And if you're a physician thinking about starting a podcast, you probably wondered, is it even worth it? Will I just end up like everyone else, shouting into the empty void? Because here's the reality. Most physician podcasts don't fail because of bad content. They stall because of isolation. The downloads flatten, feedback disappears, and then the podcaster starts to wonder if any of it even matters. Most physician podcasts don't die dramatically, they just quietly fade. The episodes get further apart, the energy drops, and eventually they stop. So, if this resonates with you, whether you're already podcasting or maybe you're thinking about starting one, stay with me because today we're going to talk about why this happens to so many podcasters and more importantly, what actually moves a podcast forward. And then at the end, I'm going to tell you about something Dr. Ann Chuang and I have created specifically for physician podcasters and physicians who want to start podcasting. It's called Dr. Podfest, and it's happening in Orlando very, very soon. But let's talk about why so many physician podcasts stall in the first place. First, I want you to know about something. If you're experiencing this plateau, or maybe you're hesitating to start because you're afraid of it, nothing is wrong with you. I've talked to hundreds of physician podcasters at this point, different specialties, different formats, different topics. I see the same pattern again and again and again. Smart, articulate, accomplished doctors, but they're getting stuck at the same place. Now, these aren't people who lack skill or discipline. These are doctors who've mastered incredibly complex fields. They build practices, they've led teams, they've done hard things. But podcasting, it hits different. And a reason it hits different is because medicine doesn't prepare us for this kind of creative work. We're trained to diagnose, to treat, to execute protocols. We're not trained to build an audience. We're not trained to position ourselves. We're not trained to do creative work in public. So if you're struggling with your podcast, or maybe you're just hesitating to start one, you're not behind. You're actually right on schedule. And this is just part of the process most doctor podcasters go through. I think there's three phases of a physician podcast. I want to give you a framework that might help you understand where you are or where you're headed. So if you're thinking about starting, I really think most physician podcasts move through three distinct phases because I have experienced this myself. Phase one is what I call the excited beginner. This is usually your first 10 or 20 episodes. You've got a clear mission. You're fired up. You get early encouragement from colleagues and maybe a few listeners who've reached out. The episodes, they feel meaningful because everything is new. You're not worried about downloads yet. You're just excited somebody is listening. It can be intoxicating. Everything feels possible. So if you're thinking about starting a podcast, this is what you're imagining. And here's the thing. It really is that good for a while. Then you hit phase two. I call it the quiet plateau. And that is where most of you listening right now probably are, or where you end up if you start without the right support. This usually happens somewhere between episode 20 and 75. Your downloads start to flatten. Maybe you're getting 50 downloads per episode, maybe 100, maybe 300, but it doesn't seem like things are moving. And worse than that, you're not getting feedback. Nobody's reaching out. No one's sharing your episode. You're recording into that empty void I mentioned earlier. The motivation that carried you to phase one starts to slip. And the question shifts. It's no longer, what should I say next? It becomes, does this even matter? So this is where discipline replaces dopamine. And here's where the dangerous thought patterns start. You think, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe my content isn't good enough. Maybe physicians don't actually even want this. So if you're thinking about starting a podcast, this is really the phase you need to know about because most doctors who start podcasts never really make it past here. Not because they fail, but because they're isolated. But here's what I need you to understand. Phase two is not about content quality. It's about context. It's about positioning. It's about having the right people around you. Because if you can get through phase two, and most physician podcasters don't, you're going to reach phase three. And phase three is what I call a leverage podcast. In phase three, you have clear audience identity. You know exactly who you're talking to. Opportunities start to show up. Speaking invitations, writing opportunities, consulting requests, collaboration offers. Your podcast becomes an asset, not a hobby. You get invited to things because of your show. Your voice has compounding returns. But here's the key insight. Most physician podcasters never reach phase three. It's not because they're bad, but because they're isolated. So if you're thinking about starting a podcast, the question isn't, should I start? The question is, how to avoid getting stuck in that phase two. Now, let me talk to you about why physicians stall more than other creators. I think there's a few reasons. First, medicine rewards competence. It doesn't reward visibility. We're trained to do excellent work quietly. We're trained to avoid standing out. We wait for credentials, permission, or perfection before we claim any kind of authority outside of our clinical role. Secondly, creative feedback. Let's face it, it's rare in medicine. We get feedback on our clinical skills, sure. We get peer review on our research, but creative work, Positioning, communication style, there's no attending for that. Third, and this is the big one, creators outside of medicine, they're growing communities. They have Discord servers, they have mastermind groups, they have conferences. They're constantly comparing notes, getting feedback, collaborating their works against their peers. Physicians, we try to figure it out solo. We apply the same mindset that we use in medical school. We work hard, study more, perfect the craft, and we assume that if we just make it better content, the audience will come. But that's not how creative work works. Medicine teaches us to work alone. Podcasting punishes isolation. So whether you're on episode 50 or episode 0, this is the trap you need to avoid. So what actually moves a podcast forward? It's not tactics, it's not hacks. It's not equipment upgrades. There are 4 levers that matter more than anything else, whether you're launching your first episode or trying to break through a plateau. So level 1 is audience clarity. Who exactly is your podcast for? What problems does it solve? Can you describe your listener in just one sentence? And if your answer is physicians who want to learn, that's not clarity, that's a category. Real clarity sounds like my target audience is hospitalists who want to build side income streams, ear docs who are navigating burnout, physicians planning practice exits. The more specific you can be, the more your content will resonate. But when you try to speak to everyone, you guessed it, you speak to no one. So if you're thinking about starting a podcast, this is the first question you need to answer. Not what will I talk about, but who am I talking to? Lever 2, feedback loops. If you need to know what's landing and what's not, which episodes get shared, which topics generate follow-up questions, what titles make people click. Most physician podcasters, we rely on download numbers, but downloads don't tell you why somebody listened or what they took away. Better feedback sources are direct listener responses, peer reviews of specific episodes, what topics generate conversations afterwards. You need feedback loops, not just vanity metrics. If you're just starting, build this in from day one. Don't wait until episode 50 to ask for feedback. Lever 3, peer collaboration. You need to hear how other physicians are introducing episodes, how they're positioning themselves, what good actually looks like in this space. You can't get better in a vacuum. You need to hear how other physician podcasters are framing their shows, what works, what doesn't, what sounds authentic versus what sounds forced. So this is the piece most physician podcasters never get. And it's the piece, be honest, that changes everything. So if you're thinking about starting, this is your competitive advantage. Learn from people who are already doing it. Level 4, identity. At some point, you have to answer the question, what am I known for? And this is where most physicians hesitate because being known for something specific feels limiting, feels like we're closing doors. But the opposite is true. Specificity is what opens doors. You don't need more hacks. You need better mirrors. So let me give you an example. I know a doctor, he launched a podcast, he had a ton of energy. The first 10 episodes were really strong, clear topics, good audio, thoughtful content, but by episode 20, 30, 40, the downloads had flatlined. He wasn't getting any growth, no feedback, just crickets. And then that internal narrative started. Maybe I'm not meant to do this. Maybe I should just focus on my practice. They're about to stop. But then they joined a small group of other physician podcasters. And in one conversation, everything shifted. They realized their podcast was for everyone, which meant it was for no one. What do? They reframed their audience to a specific niche. They clarified their positioning in the episode intros. They didn't change the content quality at all, just the context. And here's what happens. Now, the downloads, they didn't explode overnight, but they got consistency, and consistency returned. More importantly, opportunities started appearing. Speaking invitations, collaboration requests, patients finding them through podcasts. The content didn't change much. The context did. This is where most physician podcasters miss momentum. It doesn't come from better content. It comes from better positioning. And positioning doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in conversation with peers. You can reflect back what you're actually doing. So if you're thinking about starting a podcast, this is the lesson. Don't wait until you're stuck to find community. Start with it. And here's something I've learned. Creative work needs acknowledgement. And I'm not talking about ego. I'm talking about fuel. Being seen by peers matter more than download numbers because downloads are just a number. But recognition from someone who understands the work you're doing, that's different. At some point, creators don't need more episodes. They need rooms. Let me explain what I mean. When you're working in isolation, you second guess everything. You lose perspective. You don't know if you're improving. You start to wonder if it's worth it. But when you're in a community, everything shifts. You hear your voice reflected back. You see your impact through others' eyes. You realize you're not alone in the struggle. You get validation for doing hard creative work. And I've watched physicians completely shift their energy after one conversation with another physician podcaster who gets it. Now, not because they learned some new tactic, but because they felt seen. And that's what happens when you're in the right room. You get live connection, pure energy, shared language, and suddenly the work doesn't feel so heavy. So if you're thinking about starting a podcast, being in the right room from the beginning changes everything. And that's exactly why Dr. Podcast exists. There are too many podcasters who are working alone and too many physicians who want to start podcasts but they don't know where to begin. There's no place designed specifically for physician voices. No shared space to compare notes, no recognition system for physician-led media. So Dr. N and I created one. Dr. Podcast is physicians talking to physicians. Real conversation about what's working and what's not. Recognition through our inaugural Dr. Podcast Awards. Momentum in person. This isn't just a marketing conference. It's not about hacks or growth tactics. It's about being in a room with people who understand why you started or why you want to start in the first place. It's happening in Orlando, one day, a physician summit and an awards ceremony. But in addition to that, you also get access to Podfest Expo, one of the largest and most recognized podcast conferences in the country. So who is this for? Who is Dr. Podcast for? It's for physicians who want to podcast, whether it's active or maybe it's stalled. This is for physicians thinking about starting one or want to do it right from day one. This is for physicians using media to educate, advocate, or build something bigger. And this is for physicians who feel isolated in their creative work or who don't want to feel isolated before they even begin. Because here's what you're going to gain: clarity on positioning, audience, and direction before you launch or as you refine. Connection with other physician podcasters who actually get it. Confidence that your voice matters and that starting is worth it. Direction, concrete next steps, whether you're at episode 0 or episode 100. Recognition, validation for the work you're doing or the courage it takes to begin. So if you ever wondered, am I the only one feeling this way? Or should I even bother starting? This is your answer. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. My podcast is too small. If that's you, that's exactly why you should come. You need peers, not just an audience. You need people who understand the plateau. Some of you are thinking, I haven't even started yet. This is perfect. Come learn from people who are already doing it. Get your positioning right from day one. Avoid the mistakes that cause most podcasts to stall. Some are saying, I'm not sure I'll keep podcasting. Then you definitely need to be there. This might be what it reignites it. Or it might give you clarity that it's okay to stop. Either way, you'll leave with direction. And then what I get from a lot of physicians, I don't have time. It's one day. And if podcasting matters to you, or if you're considering whether it should matter to you, this is the highest leverage day you could spend. The physicians who need this most are often the ones who hesitate the longest. Don't be that person. Because here's what I believe. If your voice matters, and I believe it does, you shouldn't have to build it alone. Whether you're launching your first episode or trying to push past a plateau, momentum doesn't come from another episode. It comes from being in the room. Dr. Podfest is that room. Orlando, Florida, one day that could change your next year. So go to drpodfest.com for all the details. My name is Dr. Michael Ming. I hope to see you there.